The night was supposed to be the biggest celebration of my life. I had just sold the patent I'd spent 7 years building, testing, fixing, and fighting for. It finally paid off. $17 million wired straight into my account that morning. I felt light, proud, and a little overwhelmed. Friends and co-workers filled our home with laughter. Lights glowed warm across the walls, and music floated through the air like we were stepping into a perfect ending. I thought Mark was proud of me too. I thought he was happy to see everything I worked for finally turn into something real. I didn't know I was standing inches from the man who had already decided that the only thing standing between him and that money was me. I remember lifting my champagne glass, and the bubbles were catching the soft light. People were clapping, smiling, waiting for a toast. I turned to look at Mark, expecting the usual look he gave when he pretended to be the supportive husband. Instead, I caught the sight of his hand moving quickly, almost carefully. 3 drops from a tiny vial slipped into my glass. Clear liquid. No smell, no color. My heart didn't jump, but something inside me shifted, as if my instincts had been waiting for this moment. $17 million suddenly felt like a target painted on my back. He didn't notice me watching. He didn't know that every experiment I had ever run trained my eyes to catch the smallest changes, the tiniest movements. He didn't know I had spent half my life studying things people couldn't see. My fear faded, and something sharper took its place. I didn't react. I didn't pull away. I didn't ask why. I simply smiled the same smile I always used in rooms full of people who didn't know the truth. When no one was looking, I held my glass near my chest, pretending to adjust my bracelet. I slipped into a small corner table behind me and picked up another identical flute. His. I placed mine there and returned to the party with the replacement in hand. The moment felt unreal, almost calm. The choice he made had already written a different ending, and my mind moved faster than my emotions. He wanted me gone. He wanted the money. But he forgot I never walk into anything without preparing a backup plan. Even if I didn't know it before, I knew it now. I looked at him across the room. His smile was bright, forced, almost excited. He lifted his own flute, my original, and nodded as if telling me to drink. He had no idea he was holding the very thing he meant for me. So please stay with me as I take you through the night that changed everything. A night meant for celebration became a test of survival. What happened next wasn't luck. It was clarity. It was instinct. And it was the first step toward the coldest revenge I have ever planned. The party at our Seattle home looked perfect from the outside. Friends, colleagues, and family were smiling, clinking glasses, and praising my achievement. Everywhere you looked, it was laughter and warm congratulations. Mark stood beside me, holding his glass, smiling as if he shared in my joy. To everyone else, he was the perfect husband, proud and supportive. No one noticed the small signs, the subtle tension that lingered just beneath the surface. I noticed it. The way his eyes briefly darkened when I spoke about my team, the slight tightening of his jaw when someone mentioned the patent sale, and the little pauses that seemed too deliberate to be casual. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was reading too much into a small moment. After all, this was my night, my victory. But deep down, something in me stirred, an old feeling of caution I had learned to trust over the years. People gathered around, asking questions, sharing stories, praising my hard work. I laughed and made polite conversation, moving from one group to another. Mark followed, smiling, leaning in at just the right moments, giving the impression of a loving husband. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to enjoy the celebration. But I couldn't ignore the small signs. The way he kept brushing his hand over the inside of his jacket, how he lingered near certain cabinets, the way he occasionally glanced at my glass like a predator watching prey. It was a performance, and he had mastered it. I watched as our friends raised their glasses to me, their voices full of admiration. Mark joined in each toast, his voice steady, warm, and practiced. He spoke the right words, congratulating me, sharing in the supposed joy. To everyone else, it was seamless. No one had any reason to doubt him. No one could have guessed the calculations going on behind his calm exterior, the quiet satisfaction he felt at the thought of removing me from the picture entirely. I moved through the crowd, feeling both elated and uneasy. The room smelled of fresh flowers and expensive wine, the music lively but not too loud, the lighting perfect for celebration. I caught glimpses of Mark interacting with our guests, his charm flawless. But each smile he gave, each gentle touch on someone's shoulder, was a reminder of how carefully he hid the truth. I realized then that the life we projected, the house full of happiness and success, was only a carefully constructed show. Behind it, danger hid in plain sight. Even amid laughter and congratulations, I understood the stakes. This party wasn't just a celebration. It was a test, a trap I hadn't fully recognized yet. Every gesture, every word from Mark was measured, designed to keep appearances while he worked toward his goal. The moment seemed bright and joyful, but underneath, a storm was brewing. I knew I had to stay alert, to observe carefully, and to protect myself. What looked perfect was far from it. Every smile, every toast, every polite compliment was part of a mask hiding something much darker, and I needed to be ready for whatever came next. Mark stood near the center of the room, lifting his glass as if he were proud to share the moment with me. People turned toward him, expecting a simple, cheerful toast. But when his eyes met mine, everything around us seemed to fall away. There was no warmth in his expression, no hint of the man I thought I knew. His stare felt sharp, almost calculating, as if he were examining a problem he already knew the solution to. That was the instant something inside me shifted. I felt a calm awareness settle over me, and pieces I had ignored began sliding into place with uncomfortable clarity. It wasn't one big sign. It was a collection of smaller moments I had brushed aside, things that now felt impossible to dismiss. I remembered how he recently insisted we expand my life insurance policy, saying it was good planning. He had signed the papers with a strange eagerness, and at the time, I told myself he was simply thinking about our future. Now I understood it differently. He hadn't been planning for us. He had been planning for himself. Then there were those sudden business trips with his brother, trips he could never fully explain. He always claimed it was about helping him with some investment idea, yet he returned looking exhausted and irritated, almost nervous. I thought he was stressed. Now, watching him raise his glass, the truth felt heavier. Those trips were never about business. They were preparation. Even his mother's attitude made new sense. She had always made little comments about my earnings, about how people like us didn't understand money the way old families did. Her tone wasn't teasing. It was contempt disguised as concern. I used to shrug it off, thinking she simply didn't like how quickly my success came. But standing there, watching Mark study me with that cold look, I realized those remarks weren't random. They were part of a mindset he grew up with, one where money was something you grabbed before someone else did. The room around me continued buzzing with conversation and laughter, but inside, everything stilled. It was like someone had finally turned on a light in a dark corner I had ignored for too long. I saw his intentions clearly. The $17 million wasn't a celebration for him. It wasn't something he saw as a shared future or a reward for our hard work. To him, it was a door to a life where he didn't need me anymore. That sudden understanding settled deep inside my chest. He wasn't just distant or stressed, he was dangerous. Every move he made over the last few months suddenly felt connected, leading to this moment where he expected everything to go as he planned. As he held his glass up, waiting for me to raise mine, I knew I could no longer pretend things were normal. That single moment of understanding changed everything. I saw what he truly wanted, and it wasn't a life with me. It was a life paid for by my absence. I felt a strange calm settle over me as the realization sank in. Everything around me kept moving, voices rising, glasses clinking, but my focus narrowed to the single task I needed to carry out. I didn't rush. I didn't show fear. Instead, I allowed myself to blend right back into the flow of the party. I laughed at someone's comment, pretending nothing had changed, and gently stepped away from the small group around me. No one questioned it. I had always been good at masking my thoughts, and tonight that skill mattered more than ever. My eyes found Eleanor across the room. She stood near the fireplace, chatting proudly with a pair of distant relatives. She always positioned herself where she could be easily seen, always carried herself like the unofficial head of the family. Her posture was perfect, her smile controlled, her tone sharp but polite. She never missed a chance to remind everyone of her importance. I walked toward her with steady steps, holding the flute Mark had prepared for me. She didn't notice the way my hand tightened around the stem. When she saw me approaching, her face brightened in a way that felt more rehearsed than genuine. She enjoyed the spotlight almost as much as she enjoyed claiming credit for things she had never touched. I gave her a gentle smile, one I had practiced countless times around her. Before she could speak, I lifted the glass ever so slightly, like I was offering a small gift. "This moment is shared," I told her, my voice soft and warm. "You've been part of this journey too." The lie flowed easily. Eleanor loved anything that made her look significant, and she accepted my words without a flicker of suspicion. She reached out gracefully, her fingers brushing mine as she took the glass. I could see her absorbing the compliment, letting it feed her ego. She raised the flute slightly, tilting her chin the way she always did when she believed she was receiving the appreciation she deserved. She didn't know the truth. She had no idea what was in that drink or how close she stood to the danger meant for me. She admired the bubbles, admiring herself in the reflection of the crystal. Her expression shifted into a look of satisfaction. The same look she wore whenever she thought she'd won some quiet battle no one else noticed. Around us, the party continued as if nothing unusual was happening. People laughed, glasses tapped together, and music drifted softly through the air. But my entire world narrowed to the moment Eleanor lifted the flute slightly higher, preparing for a sip. She looked pleased, completely unaware of what she held. She didn't sense the danger. She didn't notice the tension in my shoulders or the quiet relief behind my smile. In that instant, I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, disbelief, and a sharp clarity that pushed me forward. The glass in her hand was meant to end my life, yet she held it with pride, thinking it was another symbol of her importance. She saw a celebration. I saw the truth hidden beneath the surface. And while she admired herself, I took the first step in protecting my own life, knowing what would come next would change everything. Eleanor lifted the glass without hesitation, still enjoying the attention she thought she deserved. I stood a few steps away, watching her movements closely. The room carried on with its cheerful noise, but my mind focused only on her. It didn't take long for everything to shift. The change happened so quickly that most guests didn't even notice at first. One moment she was standing tall, and the next her expression twisted in a way I had never seen before. At first, she tried to steady herself, placing a hand on the edge of a nearby table. Her confident posture faded as her breath caught in her throat. A faint sound escaped her lips, something between a gasp and a struggle for air. People around her turned, confused, unsure if she was reacting to a joke or suffering from something serious. Within seconds, her knees buckled. The elegant glass slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a sharp crack. Crystal pieces scattered across the hardwood, sparkling beneath the lights like tiny frozen sparks. The room fell silent, the music cutting off mid-beat. Conversation stopped. A few guests rushed toward her, unsure of what was happening. Eleanor collapsed completely, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her designer dress bunched around her legs as she fought for control she could no longer hold. I remained still, my pulse steady, though everything around me erupted into confusion. Mark pushed through the crowd with dramatic urgency, shouting her name as if he were terrified for her. He knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder, acting like a panicked son desperate to save his mother. His voice shook, he called for help, demanded someone call 911. To anyone watching, he looked like a man watching his world collapse. But I knew better. I studied his face closely, not the expressions he performed for the room, but the flicker of something real that slipped through when he finally looked up. Our eyes met across the chaos. People were shouting, someone was crying, footsteps rushed across the floor, but all of it faded behind that single moment. His expression froze. He wasn't looking at a frightened wife. He wasn't seeing a confused bystander. He was staring at someone who understood exactly what he had done. And he realized it before I needed to say a word. The fear in his eyes wasn't caused by his mother's collapse. It came from the realization that the plan he had set in motion had changed direction. He recognized the calm on my face, the still, deliberate calm of someone who had not only understood the danger, but had stepped out of its path. I saw the truth break through his practiced mask. His confidence slipped. His certainty cracked. His mind was racing, trying to understand how everything had shifted so quickly and so silently. He expected a victim. Instead, he saw someone who was now fully aware of what he was capable of. And for the first time, he understood that I wasn't the one who needed to be afraid. The hospital waiting room felt cold and bright, the kind of place where every sound echoed a little too loudly. Nurses moved quickly through the halls, doctors spoke in low voices, and the smell of disinfectant hung in the air. I sat on one of the stiff chairs, keeping my hands folded in my lap. Mark sat beside me, holding my arm as if he needed support. His shoulders shook, and he kept wiping his face with the back of his hand. Anyone watching would think he was a devastated son waiting for news about his mother. But I knew better. His crying wasn't grief. It was panic. Every tremble in his voice sounded like fear of exposure, not sorrow. He kept repeating the same lines. How unexpected this was, how he didn't understand what happened, how much he loved her. His words were empty, practiced, and desperate. He leaned into me as if I was the only stable thing left in his world. The irony made my stomach tighten. He wasn't holding on to me out of love. He was holding on to the life he thought he was securing. I watched him carefully, studying every detail. The way his eyes darted toward the hallway whenever a doctor walked by, the way he kept glancing at my hands as if he expected me to break down. He still believed he had the upper hand. Even with everything falling apart, he thought he could keep control by pretending to be the perfect son and the devastated husband. He didn't realize that the moment Eleanor collapsed, his plan had begun to crumble. Sitting there, surrounded by the steady beeping of hospital monitors and the distant hum of machines, something in me hardened. The fear I had felt earlier faded into something sharper and far more certain. He had turned my celebration into a trap, and he would have watched me die without a second thought. That kind of betrayal didn't leave room for forgiveness. It created a single, clear path. I decided that if he wanted to take everything from me, I would return the favor, but not with chaos or rage. My strength had always come from careful thinking, from observing patterns and solving problems in quiet, precise steps. So I would use that same patience now. Not for a scientific study, but for something far more personal. I didn't want to confront him with anger. I didn't need to shout. I needed proof. Real, solid proof that would end any chance he had of escaping consequences. I would gather every detail, every hidden action he tried to bury. His searches, his finances, his conversations. Everything he thought he had hidden from me, I would uncover piece by piece. This wasn't a revenge driven by heat or impulse. It was measured. It was deliberate. It was the only way to match the level of cruelty he had shown me. He had treated my life like something he could erase for profit. I would treat his future like something I could dismantle one step at a time. In that quiet waiting room, while he clung to a role he no longer controlled, I made my choice. If he thought he was clever, he was about to learn just how careful I could be when the experiment was my own survival. When we finally returned home from the hospital, Mark acted like he was completely broken. He walked around the house with slow steps, holding his phone to update relatives, pretending to be overwhelmed. Anyone who heard him would think he was carrying the weight of the world. But the moment he left a room, his voice changed. His tone shifted from grief to irritation, as if everything around him was an inconvenience. He believed he still had complete control. He believed I was too shaken to think clearly. That was his mistake. I went straight to my home office, closed the door, and let the quiet settle. That room had always been my space, filled with folders, hard drives, and equipment I used for my work. It became something different now. It became a place where I could untangle the truth without interruption. I powered on my computer and started digging through everything connected to Mark. The more I searched, the more the picture formed, and none of it surprised me. His business had been collapsing for months. Bills he never mentioned, debts he hid, emails full of false promises. Everything was right there. He had borrowed money from his brother, a man known for bad decisions and worse company. The loans were written in rushed messages, full of pressure and threats. Mark had been drowning long before my patent deal. He just thought my success would cover the mess he created. I kept digging. His browser history made my stomach twist. The words he searched weren't accidental. He had typed them carefully, like someone studying a subject he wanted to master. Step-by-step instructions, chemicals, timing, all laid out. It was hard to read, but I forced myself to keep going. I needed every detail. Once I had gathered enough, I knew it was time to protect myself and gather even more proof. I installed small cameras in the office, the hallway, and near the safe. They were nearly invisible, placed in corners where he would never think to look. I set up motion-triggered recording and backed everything up to multiple drives. I changed passwords, updated settings, and made sure every piece of data had a duplicate hidden somewhere safe. Then I contacted my lawyer. She wasn't just good, she was sharp and fearless. I told her everything in a steady voice, sticking to what I could prove. She listened without interrupting, then told me we would build a case so solid no one could question it. But she didn't stop there. She suggested we go one step further and create a situation that would show Mark's intentions without any confusion. So we prepared documents that looked real enough to tempt him. Financial papers suggesting I was moving large sums into accounts he didn't control. We purposely left them in places he would check if he thought I wasn't paying attention. They looked like opportunities, not traps. And we knew he wouldn't be able to ignore them. While he walked around pretending to be devastated, I stayed in my office shaping the truth into something clear, organized, and undeniable. Every file, every recording, every detail brought me closer to proving what he had done. He thought he was clever. He thought he could hide behind lies. But he had no idea that the moment he tried to save himself, he would fall right into the plan I built carefully, quietly, and with absolute purpose. When I set the trap, I wasn't sure he would fall for it so quickly, but the moment he saw those papers, his greed took over. He didn't pause, didn't question anything. He just grabbed the fake power of attorney documents like they were his lifeline. I watched from the other room, listening to the soft clicks of the hidden camera adjusting as it followed his movements. It felt unreal seeing him rush through the pages, completely convinced he had found a shortcut out of his troubles. He moved to the computer with the same desperation. His shoulders were stiff, his breathing fast, and his hands shook a little as he typed. That alone told me everything about the pressure he was under. He thought he was covering his tracks by working quickly, but the system he was using wasn't what he believed it was. Every single action, every password he tried, every file he opened, every number he entered, was being stored by the honeypot server I had set up days earlier. It recorded each detail without him even realizing he was giving himself away. He typed the transfer amount like it was nothing. $500,000. I knew he was drowning in debt, but seeing that number typed out made it clear just how far he was willing to go. He didn't hesitate once. He went straight into the decoy account and prepared the transfer as if he had done it many times before. He truly believed he was in control, that he was about to solve all his problems in one smooth move. But the truth was the opposite. Every second he spent there only tightened the net around him. There was a moment when he leaned back in the chair, almost relieved, as if the hardest part was over. He didn't understand that the screen in front of him wasn't connected to anything real. The account wasn't real. The approval buttons weren't real. Everything he touched was part of the setup built to show exactly what he intended to do. His own choices were exposing him, step by step. I kept quiet, letting him dig deeper. It wasn't easy watching him cross line after line, but I needed the full picture. His decisions, not just his intentions. When he finally clicked the last confirmation button, he even smiled, thinking he had just saved himself. That was the moment the system completed the log. Dozens of screenshots, timestamps, keystrokes, and video clips, all tied neatly to him. He got up from the chair, proud of what he thought he had pulled off, still unaware that the walls were already closing in. His greed had guided him straight into a trap he never questioned for even a second. And as he walked away, the evidence he created remained behind, solid and undeniable, waiting for the moment he would finally learn the truth. I waited for him in the living room, keeping the lights low and the TV ready. I didn't plan to shout or argue. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. When he walked through the door, tired and pretending everything was normal, I picked up the remote and pressed play. The screen lit up with the footage of him taking the papers and working at the computer, every movement clear. He froze the moment he saw the first frame. His bag slipped from his hand and hit the floor without a sound. He kept staring at the screen, as if looking away would make the video disappear. His face slowly lost all color, and for a second he didn't even blink. It was like watching someone realize their own shadow had betrayed them. He finally managed to whisper something, but his voice cracked. "It was you." He said it like he couldn't believe I had been the one to expose him, like I was the person who had wronged him. There was confusion in his voice, fear mixed with a desperate attempt to understand what was happening. He opened his mouth again, ready to spill out excuses and stories he had probably rehearsed 100 times, but he never got the chance. A firm knock hit the door, and before he could react, Detective Miller stepped inside with 2 officers behind her. She didn't raise her voice or show any anger. She simply read his rights in a calm, steady tone that filled the room. He turned toward her as if someone had pulled the floor out from under him. He looked from her to me, panic settling into his expression, and for once he had no words. When the officers took his arms, he didn't fight, but his eyes darted around like he was searching for a way to stop what was happening. He kept shaking his head, quietly mumbling half-formed explanations, none of which mattered anymore. The evidence was right there, playing on the TV screen behind him, repeating every choice he had made. The moment the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he flinched. It was small, but I saw it. That tiny reaction felt like the truth finally breaking through all his lies. He looked stunned, almost offended, as if he believed he still deserved a chance to talk his way out of it. But there was nothing left to say. I watched without speaking. I didn't feel the urge to shout, insult him, or list everything he had done. The silence between us said enough. He had destroyed his own path, step by step, and this was the final result of every decision he tried to hide. As they led him out the door, he looked back at me once, his face full of disbelief. But I didn't look away. I let him see that I was done holding his secrets. And in that quiet moment, I felt something close to relief, because he finally had to face the consequences he'd spent so long avoiding. The courtroom felt cold the day I stood to speak, but my voice stayed steady. I didn't talk about hurt or betrayal. I explained the facts, what he tried to take, how he planned it, and what his choices had cost our family. Every word was clear and measured, and I could feel the room shift as I spoke. He kept his eyes down the entire time, unable to look at me. When the judge announced 25 years, he didn't say a single word. He just sat there, finally facing the life he had created for himself. When it was over, I walked out of the courthouse with a quiet sense of release. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. The money he had tried to steal now works for a purpose he never would have understood. I used it to start a research foundation under my name, one focused on helping people who don't have the resources or support I once lacked. Building it gave me something solid to stand on again, something he had no part in. Life at home changed in ways I didn't expect. My daughter and I moved into a new place, one that feels calm the moment you walk through the door. There's no pretending, no fear, no careful watching of every reaction. She laughs freely now, and I sleep without waiting for the next hidden problem to appear. The house is simple, but every room feels safe. For the first time in years, I can breathe without feeling a weight pressing on my chest. Sometimes I think about everything he tried to do, the plans, the lies, the pretending. He wanted control. He wanted my future to depend on what he decided. But in the end, his own actions marked the path that led him away from us. He destroyed himself trying to destroy me. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I shifted the entire equation. I stopped reacting to him and started shaping my own direction. My freedom wasn't given to me. It was something I built piece by piece while he trapped himself in the mess he created. Now, when I look at my daughter sitting at the kitchen table doing homework or see the foundation's name printed on a project report, I feel a kind of steady peace. He once believed I could be erased with one plan and one signature. But I ended up with something far more valuable: my independence, my future, and a life untouched by his shadow. Do you think I handled everything the right way, or should I have confronted him differently? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy stories like mine, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a video.